As a cosplayer, I would say my strongest suit is probably wig styling. It's been something I've been consistent with for as long as I've been a cosplayer, and I'm always constantly and innovating my craft. So I've decided to finally give you the video I've been mentioning way too many times. What actually goes into wig styling? Hi guys, I'm Mittens Cosplay. I am a dancer, cosplayer, and content creator, and I'm here to just spread my knowledge and hopefully help people figure out some things I wish I had known before I started cosplaying. Today we are going to cover wig styling. It's something that, like I said, I've been doing forever, and I just want to teach people how I do wig styling my way. As a disclaimer, this is just how I style my wigs. There's a ton of other ways to style your wigs, and this is not some sort of cosplay Bible. So if you see me do something that you don't really agree with or don't really want to do to your wigs, you don't have to. Just take what you feel resonates with you, and if something doesn't resonate with you, then that's completely fine. All of these tips can work perfectly fine on their own. First things first, before I even start the styling process, I focus on wig prep. Most of my wig prep stems from just crimping it, and crimpers can offer texture to the wig and make them easier to style with, especially if you're looking to go for the more cartoony anime style, like how I style my wigs. I will typically give my wigs a little wash, but I don't really do the fabric softener method that I see a lot of people talk about, because I've learned recently that fabric softener actually doesn't really do anything to your wig and just kind of makes it, you know, smell like fabric softener and all slick. I will link the video of who I found that out from. And I'm mostly just looking for my wigs not to be super shiny, and that's it. And crimpers actually do that for me, honestly. Like, I haven't washed this wig, I haven't done anything to it, I've just crimped it, and there's barely any shine. Now, there's different degrees of crimping, which basically is just how much you want to fry your wig. There's a light crimp, which will basically just give you, you know, the effects of if you backcombed, brushed out, backcombed a few times your wig, and it doesn't really leave any crimp marks. I've started doing that more often myself. I used to do a more medium crimp, but I found out that a light crimp works just as fine as any other kind of crimp. And then there's that small mid-ground between light and fried, which is what I used to do, a medium crimp, which where you hold down your crimper for a little bit longer than just a few seconds. And I stopped doing that because you can still kind of see the crimp marks. And then you can absolutely fry your wig, which I used to do, which I would not recommend unless you like the look of the crimp marks. I don't personally do that anymore just because I've learned that you don't need to hold down your crimper for as long as, you know, forever. And you could also risk, you know, melting or burning your wig, and I don't really think you want to do that. And as I previously mentioned, if you don't own a crimper, you can do the backcombing and brushing out method. I may be biased because I own a crimper. I personally wouldn't recommend this because I used to do it and it took a lot more time than it did to just crimp the wig and brush it out. Like, if the only wigs I still use that have been backcombed and brushed out is my Nagito Kawaii wig, which I haven't even cosplayed Nagito in like forever because I can't find the shirt. Ignore that. I still intend to cosplay with that wig. So for reference, if you look at my Nagito wig, you'll see it looks very fluffy, and you know, I curled it a little bit, brushed it out, you know, it's very big. How many times do you think I backcomb that and brush it out? Once, twice, thrice, perhaps? Got your answers locked in? Over 20 times. Yeah. I typically would only advise backcombing and brushing out if you're going not for such a huge, ginormous look, and if you're just looking to add structure, or if you're only looking for a little bit of volume, like with these piggy tails. I backcombed them a couple times just to add a little bit more volume, and like, it works fine. But that was already because they were crimped beforehand. So when it comes to starting your wig prep, the first thing you want to do is make sure that your wig is fully brushed out. I always take a few minutes while my crimper is heating up to just go around the wig with a fine-tooth comb, make sure it's all brushed out all the way around. This is to make sure that there are no knots in our wigs when we start crimping it, because I've never wanted to find out what happens when you get knots all messed up in crimpers, but I don't want to wait around and find out. When starting the crimping process, I like to do the back of the wig first and then do the bangs separately. The first step is to look for all the different layers in the back of the wig. And the wefts are the long strip of wig fibers that are attached to the wig cap all the way around. I separate those all out and pin them to the wig. I typically like to do my crimping every 3 layers or so from the back, just so it doesn't take me absolutely forever. Once my wig is all pinned up and in place, I take my crimper and a small strip of the wefts I separated and gently press down my crimper in a diagonal motion. I only leave my crimper down for a couple seconds at most, just to make sure there is a small imprint there, but nothing really long lasting, because you don't want those crimp marks to show up. And I go in a diagonal motion because I've heard, and I think I've proven to myself, that it also further reduces crimp marks as you go. Now, depending on the length of the wig, I will do different degrees of crimping. Typically for more medium to long wigs, I will feel more comfortable to crimp a little longer than, you know, a typical light crimp, even though I do usually do light crimps across the board nowadays. But I specifically try to stay away from anything more than a light crimp for short wigs, because with short wigs, when you crimp them too much, they puff up and get all frizzy, and it's not a great look. And today, since our test subject is Shinji, his hair is very, very short, so we are going to be doing a nice light crimp across the board. After I do that same method of crimping diagonally in small strips, once I reach the end of that group, I take my can of hairspray, spray down that group, and then I move on to the next layer. I unpin the hair, repart it, and then pin it back down. Normally, people tell me, oh, you can just brush out the wefts right away. I don't like to do that. And that's not for anything any reason in particular. I just like the way it looks when you brush them out all together. It does mean you have to make sure you flip up layers so you can brush everything out, but I think it looks more satisfying. So I will do what I please. Thank you very much. So now that the back is done and while that top bit of hairspray is drying, I'm going to start on the bangs. So when it comes to bangs, I tend to separate the wefts out into a bit thinner of groups, and this is why I do back and then bangs, because with the back you can get away with crimping layers together more. But once you get to the front, I like to separate it out into like 1 to 2 layers per group, just to make sure it ends up looking nice. Now once you're finished crimping your bangs and your wig is nice and crispy, now it's time to brush everything out. You can use really any brush, but I recommend a brush with metal prongs. Mine is from Arto Wigs. and it is a huge lifesaver. Wig brushes are really useful. They're basically like big paddle dog or cat brushes, and I find that it's a lot easier to brush out wigs than a typical brush. Just be careful of the bristles because they are actually sharp, and I have made holes in my fingers with the bristles, so please be very careful. I start out my brushing the same way as I started out my crimping, from the back and then the bangs. And while you're brushing, you want to make sure you're flipping up your layers so you can get through everything in here. That's only if you're brushing it out like me. If you're not like me and you want to brush out your layers as you crimp them, that is also totally an option, and just ignore me. And after that's all smooth and brushed out, I move on to the bangs and just do the same thing. Make sure you're flipping until it's all brushed out. And that is how I handle most of my wig prep. Of course, there are some special cases like glued hairlines or something like that, but I'm not going to be covering those today just because I'm still very new to those. And when I have more experience on working with glued hairlines, I will definitely make a video going on. And now that we have our wig prepped, how do we actually style it? Bangs are the main part I like to focus on, and most of the time they end up becoming one of the most complicated thing for my wig. Before I even go into the hairspray or the hair dryer or anything like that, I'm going to reach for my sewing pins and my scissors first. Now, I use a mix of sewing pins and wig pins, just depends on what I can find on my hand at one time. I've seen people use giant skewers. It's whatever works best for you. And when it comes to scissors, there's really no wrong kind of scissors. You can use just any scissors that you're comfortable with using and can cut little tiny things in there. And when you're working with scissors, always make sure to not cut the blunt way unless you're looking for blunt bangs. You can either point cut, which is bringing your scissors vertical to your hair and going like this. Or you can do it another way, which I mostly use, is when you hold your scissors horizontally, but move your scissors up and down as you cut. And for the pins, they basically map out where each little spiky bit of my bangs are gonna go. This is really good for big spikes, small spikes, swoops, anything that you need to give a little bit of structure just to see how it looks before you end up committing to it with the hairspray and the hair dryer and everything. And once you have that all trimmed and placed and you're happy with it, now it's time to lock that in. I use both hairspray and a hair dryer. I've seen people use steamers, just hairspray. There's a lot of different ways, but I use a hairspray and a hair dryer. I like to start at my center bangs and move out. So I first spray down the area and make sure that the fibers are saturated. And then I go in with my hair dryer. I start on a low setting to set the shape, just poking around and making sure everything is laying where it should be. And once I've set the shape, I will switch to a high setting. Now on the high setting, you want to switch between hot air and cold air. One, so you don't burn your hand while you're smoothing out stuff in there. But also, I couldn't tell you how this works. This just happened from me messing around. When you switch between hot and cold, it makes it a lot more solid and like not as mushy as it would be if you just went in with hot, high setting hairdryer. And after you repeat all this on each of your little bang pieces, you can go ahead and take all those pins out and admire your work. Next, I want to talk about spikes. Now, spikes are a little different from bangs since they're a little more free-floating. They're normally out here somewhere. So instead of using pins to map everything out, make sure you're happy with it, it's a little harder because you have to kind of eyeball it and do it one at a time. Many of my wigs have been styled purely with just spiking, such as Arashi Narukami from Ensemble Stars or Tanjiro Kamado from Demon Slayer. Though you don't have to use spikes exclusively like big crazy spikes exclusive from anything else. I like to add small little spikes to the sides of like more, I guess, I don't want to say elegant. I like to add spikes to the sides of my other wigs just to give them that little bit of pizzazz to them, you know? To make a spike on your wig, you want to start by finding where you want the spike to be, which is basically just grabbing at the wig and like flipping it out until you like, oh, that's a good spot. And then you're going to take your scissors and trim the ends of that area into a little triangle. Just kind of helps it go into place a bit. Once you've trimmed it, hold it back up in that initial position and make sure you like where it looks. They can go up, they can go down, they can go all around. Just find out where you want your spike to be. And once you're happy with that, it's time to get your hairspray and hairdryer again. So this is very similar to how you're gonna do your bangs, except you need to be a little more handsy in there just to make sure things are holding their shape. So you're gonna spray down your spike, make sure it's saturated, and then hold it up, whether it's flipping out, whether it's flipping down, and you're gonna hold it in position. Then with your other hand, you're gonna turn on your hairdryer again in the low position and make sure you get all the areas around the spike, or at least as much as you can, so it will hold its shape. Now once you can pull your hand away and it will hold its shape, then you're ready to turn to the high setting, going between the hot and cold setting and making sure that it is locked in. And as a tip, on the high setting, if your spikes are hanging out to the side or not leaning like against your wig head, it would be a good idea to put your hand behind the spike so it doesn't end up flinging back and like ruining everything, because that's what will happen if it ends up flying around all because you didn't do that. And once you've sealed it all in, there's your spike. Look at you styled a spike. Good job. And now that you've styled your wig to perfection, you want to make sure that perfection lasts a while, right? You know, you don't want to go to a convention and then come home and like your middle bang looks like this instead of this. So the answer to that is using clear tacky glue. A lot of people use this. I learned that from, you know, more professional cosplay wig stylists who charge a lot of money for their commissions. Clear tacky glue can be used for things like gluing wefts, but it is also really useful for sealing in your spikes. Now, when I normally see people use clear tacky glue, they normally have it in like this cute little squeeze bottle. You know, the small size, but no, I'm crazy. So I bought the big tub, and I use a little paintbrush to put it on. So when sealing the wigs, I take my big old thing of glue and dip my little paintbrush in there, and I just put a small little bit of glue around the end of the spike. I then go in with my fingers, and yes, your fingers are gonna get sticky and gross. Don't quote that. And you're just going to smooth out that little bit of glue around there, make sure it covers front to back all the way around that end. Just because if you don't do anything to it, then you get these big globs of clear glue that you can still see on the wig when it dries, and it looks disgusting and you have to cut it out, and it's just, it's not fun. And really, that's all there is to it. It's not that hard of a process. It's almost like a victory lap of like, hey, you did this, now you're sealing in your work, and it's really fun to do. And that's what goes into my wig styling, at least my normal wig styling. There are some special cases, like I said, but those are where I'm still learning and innovating, and when I feel that I have mastered that, I will come to you and share my knowledge. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was definitely a labor of love for me because I've been planning this video for months now, and I just now decided to film it. I started writing this script like literally in an exam because I finished like 45 minutes early, and I'm really happy to see that I got to do it in this cosplay and that I get to show people, you know, what goes into it, because I really love sharing what I know, especially when it can help people improve. So I just hope that you take something from this video And if you have any questions in the comments, I'm more than happy to answer them. You just let me know and I will be there probably within 30 seconds because I love answering comments. And if you're interested in wig commissions, I do them myself. If you are interested in commissioning me, I will leave the links to my Instagram specifically for wigs, and you can shoot me a DM there and we will discuss. If you're interested in more daily cosplay content, because I only post here like every 2 to 3 months, you can check out my TikTok and my Instagram. I definitely post on my TikTok a lot more often than I post on my Instagram, but those are a lot more daily content and more content than when I post here. I hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, you liked it. If you want to see more from me, feel free to subscribe. And I'm sure there will be some more videos in the end card if you want to, check out some more of my work. I would really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it. And I hope you all have a good day. Bye-bye!